I was sitting on my porch, enjoying my Saturday morning coffee when a silver SUV pulled up to my property, and a middle-aged woman with a blonde bob haircut stepped out, clutching a leather folder like it was the Holy Grail. She wore expensive athleisure wear and oversized sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I knew trouble when I saw it, and this woman had trouble written all over her. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice dripping with false politeness. "Are you the owner of this property?" I set down my coffee mug and walked to the edge of my porch. "I am. Robert Richardson. Can I help you?" She climbed the first 2 steps without invitation, extending a manicured hand. "I'm Patricia Winters, president of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. We need to discuss a serious violation." I didn't shake her hand. "I'm not part of any HOA." Patricia's smile tightened. "Your property is located at 847 Maple Ridge Drive, correct?" "That's right." "Then you're absolutely part of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. Your driveway is in clear violation of our community standards." She opened her folder and pulled out a printed document with highlighted sections. I leaned against my porch railing, crossing my arms. "My driveway?" "Yes. According to HOA Regulations Section 12.4, all driveways must be constructed of approved materials, specifically concrete or interlocking pavers in earth tones. Your driveway is gravel, which is explicitly prohibited. Additionally, it exceeds the maximum width allowed by 8 feet. She thrust the paper toward me. I didn't take it. "Like I said, I'm not part of your HOA. Patricia's fake smile disappeared entirely. "Mr. Richardson, I don't think you understand. This isn't optional. When you purchased this property, you agreed to abide by our rules and regulations. The HOA has been in place since 2019, and your property deed clearly states—" "My property deed states nothing about your HOA because I bought this house in 2017, I interrupted. 2 years before your little club even existed." Her face flushed red. "That's impossible. Every property in this subdivision is required to be part of the HOA. Not mine." I picked up my coffee again, taking a slow sip. "And even if I was part of your HOA, you'd have no jurisdiction over that driveway." "Oh, really? And why is that?" "Because it's not my driveway. It's a public road that I maintain privately." Patricia laughed, a sharp, condescending sound. "A public road? Don't be ridiculous. That's clearly your private driveway leading to your garage." I set my coffee down again and pulled out my phone. "You're standing on Maple Ridge Drive right now. The road you drove in on. But the actual official Maple Ridge Drive, according to county records, runs from Highway 47 all the way to the end of my property line." I pulled up the saved documents on my phone and showed her the county surveyor's map. She barely glanced at it. "This is absurd." "That's your driveway." "No, it's not. See, when this land was first developed back in the 1950s, Maple Ridge Drive was planned to continue through to connect with Pine Valley Road on the other side of that hill." I pointed toward the wooded area beyond my property. "But the development fell through, and only 3 houses were ever built out here. Mine, the Johnson place about a 1/4 mile back, and old Mrs. Henderson's house another 1/2 mile past that. The county officially designated this whole stretch as a public road, but they never maintained it because it didn't go anywhere useful." Patricia's jaw tightened. "That doesn't change the fact that it looks like a private driveway and violates our aesthetic standards." "Your aesthetic standards don't apply to public roads," I said calmly. "Even if the county doesn't maintain it. We'll see about that." She pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. "I'm documenting this violation with photographic evidence. You'll be receiving a formal notice within 48 hours. And if you don't bring this eyesore into compliance, You'll be fined $500 per day until the issue is resolved. I stood up straight. You're not hearing me, Patricia. You have no authority here. I have plenty of authority. I'm the HOA president, and I take my responsibilities very seriously. She walked down the steps and started taking photos of the gravel drive from various angles. This affects property values for the entire community. What community? The nearest house in your HOA is 3 miles down the highway. She ignored me and continued photographing. I watched her circle around, getting shots of my house, my truck, even my mailbox. When she finished, she marched back to her SUV. You'll be hearing from our lawyers, she called out before slamming her door and driving away, kicking up dust and gravel as she went. I stood there for a moment, shaking my head. In the 15 years I'd owned this property, I'd never had a single complaint. The road was perfectly functional, better maintained than when I'd bought the place. I'd spent thousands of dollars over the years grading it, adding fresh gravel, ensuring proper drainage. The county certainly wasn't going to do it. I called my neighbor, George Johnson, to give him a heads up. You're kidding me, George said when I explained what happened. She came all the way out here about your driveway. Apparently it's a violation of their aesthetic standards. George laughed. That HOA has been trying to expand their territory for years. They keep sending me letters about joining voluntarily. I keep throwing them in the trash. Smart man. You think she'll actually try to fine you? She seemed pretty determined. Well, good luck with that. Let me know if you need anything. Monday morning, I was at my desk working when my email pinged. Sure enough, there was a message from the Meadowbrook Estates HOA with several attachments. The first was a formal violation notice, complete with the photos Patricia had taken. The second was a copy of their bylaws. The third was a payment request for $500, listing my supposed violations. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, Marcus Chen, with a brief explanation. He called me 20 minutes later. This is interesting. That's one word for it. They're claiming your property was automatically enrolled in the HOA when the subdivision expanded in 2019, Marcus said. But that's not how it works. You can't be retroactively forced into an HOA without your consent. That's what I told her. The bigger issue is them trying to regulate a public road. Even if you were part of the HOA, which you're not, they have no legal standing to dictate the condition of a county-designated public road. So what do I do? Let me send them a letter explaining the legal situation. That usually takes care of these things. Most HOAs back off when they realize they're in the wrong. And if they don't, then we escalate. But let's try the easy way first. Marcus sent his letter that afternoon. I figured that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Wednesday morning, I woke up to find an orange violation sticker plastered across my mailbox. It was from the Meadowbrook Estates HOA, listing multiple violations and threatening immediate legal action. They'd also stuck notices along the length of the road. Bright orange signs every 50 feet declaring violation of HOA regulations with a reference number. I pulled them all down, counting 17 signs in total. Someone had come onto the road, probably early that morning, and put up all these notices like I was running some kind of condemned property. I took photos of everything and sent them to Marcus. His response was immediate. This is harassment. I'm filing a cease and desist. But Patricia wasn't done. That afternoon, I got a call from the county planning department. Mr. Richardson, this is Carol at the planning office. We've received a complaint about illegal construction at your address. Illegal construction. I haven't built anything. The complaint states that you've constructed an unauthorized driveway without proper permits. I rubbed my temples. That's the existing road. Maple Ridge Drive, it's been here since the 50s. There was a pause. Hold on, let me pull up the file, I heard typing. Oh, yes, I see. Maple Ridge Drive is indeed a designated public road. Has there been any new construction on that road? No. I maintain it privately, but I haven't changed anything structural, just regular maintenance. Then there's no issue from our perspective. The complaint mentioned unpermitted construction, but maintaining an existing road doesn't require permits. I'll note that in the file and close the complaint. Thank you. No problem. Though I should mention, this is the third complaint we've received about your property this week. My grip tightened on the phone. Third? Yes. One about the supposed illegal construction, one claiming you're running a commercial vehicle operation without proper zoning, and one about unpermitted land clearing. She sounded tired. All from the same person, Patricia Winters. We've dealt with her before. She tends to file complaints about anything she doesn't like. I'm not running any business and I haven't cleared any land. I figured as much. We still have to investigate every complaint, but I'll expedite the process. Someone will come out tomorrow to verify there are no actual violations, and then we can close all 3 complaints. A county inspector named Dave showed up Thursday morning. He was a middle-aged guy with a clipboard and a patient demeanor that suggested he'd seen it all. Sorry about this, he said as he walked the property. Patricia Winters is well known to our office. She files about 24 complaints a month. Seriously. Oh yeah, most of them are completely baseless. She just doesn't like anything that doesn't fit her vision of what the neighborhood should look like. He examined the road, made some notes, and took a few photos. This road is in better condition than half the actual county-maintained roads. You do all this yourself? Yeah. I have it graded twice a year and add fresh gravel as needed. Well, you're doing a better job than we would. Everything looks fine here. No violations, no unpermitted work. I'll file my report today. After he left, I thought maybe that would finally convince Patricia to back off. But I should have known better. Friday afternoon, I came home from the hardware store to find a large construction dumpster blocking the entrance to my road. Not just partially blocking it, completely blocking it. There was no way to drive around it. I had to park on the highway shoulder and walk up to my house, carrying my purchases a quarter mile in the August heat. The dumpster had a company name and number on the side. I called immediately. Yeah, we dropped that off this morning, the dispatcher said. Payment was made in full for a 2-week rental. Who paid for it? Let me check. Order was placed by Patricia Winters, representing the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. She said it was for a community cleanup project. She placed it on a public road without any permits. We were told all permits were handled. They weren't. This is blocking the only access to 3 residential properties. The dispatcher sighed. Look, if there's a dispute, you need to work it out with the person who ordered it. We can't just move it without their authorization or a police order. I called the county sheriff's office next. Deputy Martinez arrived about an hour later. This is definitely illegal, he said, examining the dumpster. You can't block a public road without permits, and even with permits, you can't completely obstruct access. He took down the information and called the dumpster company himself. This is Deputy Martinez with the county sheriff's office. You have a dumpster blocking Maple Ridge Drive. It needs to be moved immediately, or I'll have it towed at the owner's expense and cite them for illegal obstruction. The dumpster company agreed to move it first thing Saturday morning. As for Miss Winters, the deputy said, I'm going to pay her a visit and explain that blocking public roads is illegal. If she continues this harassment, you can file for a restraining order. I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. Yeah, well, I've dealt with her before. She's got a history of these kinds of stunts. He shook his head. Some people have too much time on their hands. That evening, Marcus called with an update. The HOA has rejected my letter. They're claiming that regardless of the road's designation, it serves as your primary driveway and therefore falls under their purview as a visual element affecting community standards. That makes no sense. It's completely nonsensical from a legal standpoint, but they're insisting. They've also sent a formal letter stating that if you don't comply within 30 days, they'll file a lawsuit. Let them file. We'll win. We will, but it'll cost time and money. I'm going to send one more letter, very clearly explaining that they have no legal standing and that continuing this harassment opens them up to a countersuit. Maybe that'll make them think twice. It didn't. The following Tuesday, I received a certified letter from the HOA's law firm, Henderson and Associates out of Denver, Colorado. My property was about 40 miles northwest of Denver, near the town of Boulder Creek, and apparently the HOA had hired an expensive firm to pursue their ridiculous claim. The letter demanded I immediately cease using the unpermitted private driveway and restore it to approved HOA standards within 14 days, or face legal action including injunctive relief and financial penalties. Marcus laughed when I forwarded it to him. Their lawyers clearly haven't done their homework. This is template language. I bet they didn't even explain the actual situation to their attorneys. What now? Now I respond with the facts, including the county designation, the surveyor's maps, and the title history. Once their lawyers understand what they're actually dealing with, they'll advise the HOA to drop this. But Henderson and Associates didn't drop it. Instead, they doubled down, sending an even more aggressive letter threatening immediate legal action. They're billing hours, Marcus explained. The HOA probably has a hefty legal fund, and these attorneys are milking it. They don't care if the case has merit. They get paid either way. So they're just going to keep pushing until someone makes them stop, yes. Then let's make them stop. Marcus filed a declaratory judgment action in Boulder County District Court, asking the court to officially declare that my property was not part of the HOA and that the HOA had no jurisdiction over Maple Ridge Drive. We also included a request for sanctions against the HOA for frivolous harassment. That's when things got really interesting. 2 days after we filed, Patricia showed up at my property again, this time with 3 other people. I watched from my window as they walked along the road, taking measurements and more photos. One of them was surveying with professional equipment. I went outside. "Can I help you folks?" Patricia turned to me with a triumphant smile. "We're conducting an independent survey to prove that this is not actually a public road. The county records already prove that. County records can be wrong. We're going to demonstrate that this road was abandoned and reverted to private property, specifically your private property, making it subject to HOA regulations." The surveyor, a younger man with expensive gear, looked uncomfortable. "Madam, I already explained that county records are definitive for road designations. My survey can measure the physical features, but it can't change the legal status." "Just do your job," Patricia snapped. I addressed the surveyor directly. "You're being hired to survey a designated public road. Whatever results you provide won't change its legal status." He nodded slowly. "I understand. I'm just here to measure and document the physical characteristics." They spent 2 hours measuring and documenting before finally leaving. I didn't interfere, just let them waste their time and money. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, Patricia seemed to take my lawsuit as a personal challenge. She ramped up her harassment campaign. She filed complaints with the county about everything imaginable. alleged noise violations, supposed environmental damage, claims that I was illegally diverting water drainage, accusations that my vehicles were abandoned junk cars. Every single complaint was investigated and dismissed, but it was exhausting dealing with the constant stream of inspectors and officials showing up at my door. She also started showing up personally, sometimes multiple times a week, to document what she called ongoing violations. She'd park on the highway and walk up the road with her camera, taking photos of everything. My truck, my house, my satellite dish, my propane tank, even my garbage cans. George Johnson called to tell me she'd been asking him questions about my property. She wanted to know if you had loud parties, if you ran a business out of your home, if you had aggressive dogs, George said. I told her you were the quietest neighbor I'd ever had and to leave you alone. I appreciate that. She's determined to make your life miserable, isn't she? Seems that way. Mrs. Henderson, my elderly neighbor on the other side, also reported a visit from Patricia. She asked if I'd be willing to testify that your driveway was an eyesore that decreased my property value, Mrs. Henderson said when she called. I told her I thought your driveway was lovely and that you'd been taking care of this road for years. She didn't like that. The week before the court hearing, Patricia's harassment reached a new level. I woke up one morning to find that someone had dumped a load of construction debris across the road, about 100 feet from my house. Broken drywall, old lumber, bent rebar, and other trash completely blocked the path. I called Deputy Martinez again. This is illegal dumping, he said, surveying the mess. Did you see who did it? No, but I have a pretty good idea. Can you prove it? Not directly, he sighed. Without proof, there's not much I can do about who dumped it, but it is blocking a public road, which is a violation. I'll file a report. I spent the entire day cleaning up the debris, hauling it away in my truck. It took 7 loads to clear it all. 2 days later, it happened again. Different debris this time, mostly old roofing shingles and broken concrete, but same result, completely blocking the road. That's when I decided to install cameras. I set up 3 trail cameras with night vision along the road, hidden but covering all the key areas. I also installed a better camera system at my house. The cameras paid off immediately. That weekend, around 2 in the morning, they caught a pickup truck dumping another load of debris. The footage was clear enough to make out the license plate. I called Deputy Martinez and sent him the footage. Well, that's definitely illegal dumping, he said. Let me run this plate. He called back an hour later. The truck is registered to Patricia Winters' husband, Donald Winters. I'm heading over there now to have a conversation. I never heard exactly what was said, but the dumping stopped. However, Patricia sent me an angry text message, somehow having gotten my number, claiming I was harassing her family and that she'd be adding that to her legal complaints. Finally, the court date arrived. Marcus and I arrived at the Boulder County District Courthouse early. Patricia showed up with 2 lawyers from Henderson and Associates, both wearing expensive suits and carrying multiple briefcases. The hearing was in front of Judge Elizabeth Morrison, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who had a reputation for cutting through legal nonsense. The HOA's lead attorney, a man named Richard Pemberton, went first. He argued that regardless of the historical designation, Maple Ridge Drive functioned as my private driveway and should therefore be subject to HOA aesthetic standards. He presented photos of the road, emphasizing its gravel surface and informal appearance. The HOA has a legitimate interest in maintaining property values and aesthetic standards throughout the community, Pemberton argued. This unpaved road is visible from the highway and reflects poorly on the entire neighborhood. Judge Morrison interrupted. Counselor, Is Maple Ridge Drive designated as a public road by the county? Pemberton hesitated. Technically, yes, but... And is Mr. Richardson's property part of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA? The HOA was established in 2019, and while Mr. Richardson's property predates the HOA, it is geographically located within the boundaries. That's not what I asked. Did Mr. Richardson sign any agreement to join the HOA? No, Your Honor, but thank you. She turned to Marcus. Counselor Chen. Marcus stood and presented our case clearly and concisely. He provided the county records showing Maple Ridge Drive's designation as a public road since 1952. He showed the title history proving I'd purchased the property in 2017, 2 years before the HOA existed. He presented the deed, which contained no HOA covenants or restrictions. Your Honor, this is straightforward, Marcus said. Mr. Richardson is not a member of the HOA and never agreed to be. The road in question is a legally designated public road. The HOA has no jurisdiction over either Mr. Richardson's property or Maple Ridge Drive. Their continued harassment has caused my client significant distress and expense. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents for several minutes. Then she looked up at Pemberton. Counselor, did your client inform you that Maple Ridge Drive is a designated public road? Pemberton glanced at Patricia, who was sitting in the gallery. We were told it was Mr. Richardson's private driveway that he was claiming was a public road. And did you verify this claim with the county? We relied on our client's representation and their independent survey. A survey that shows what, exactly, the physical characteristics of the road, because I'm looking at county records that are very clear about this road's legal status. She flipped through more pages. I'm also seeing multiple dismissed county complaints, all filed by Miss Winters against Mr. Richardson. I'm seeing a pattern of harassment that concerns me greatly. Patricia stood up from the gallery. Your Honor, I'm just trying to maintain standards. Sit down, Miss Winters. You'll have your opportunity to speak if I ask you to. Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. Patricia sat, her face flushed with anger. Judge Morrison continued reviewing the documents, her expression growing increasingly stern. Finally, she set them down and looked at both attorneys. Here's my ruling. Mr. Richardson's property is not and has never been part of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. He purchased his property before the HOA existed, never signed any agreements to join, and his deed contains no covenants or restrictions related to the HOA. Therefore, the HOA has no jurisdiction over his property. Pemberton started to stand, but Judge Morrison held up her hand. I'm not finished. Furthermore, Maple Ridge Drive is unquestionably a designated public road according to county records. The fact that Mr. Richardson maintains it privately out of necessity does not change its legal status. The HOA has no more authority to regulate this road than they would to regulate any other public street. She turned her attention to Patricia. Miss Winters, stand up, please. Patricia stood, looking defiant. I've reviewed the case file, including the multiple county complaints you filed against Mr. Richardson, all of which were dismissed as baseless. I've read about the dumpster blocking the road, the debris dumping, and the pattern of harassment. This is unacceptable behavior. I was protecting property values. You were harassing a private citizen who has every right to use his property and the public road that serves it. The HOA's actions here border on stalking and have clearly crossed the line into harassment. She looked at both HOA attorneys. I'm granting Mr. Richardson's petition for declaratory judgment. Additionally, I'm ordering the Meadowbrook Estates HOA to cease all contact with Mr. Richardson unless he initiates it. No visits, no letters, no complaints to county agencies, nothing. If Miss Winters or anyone acting on behalf of the HOA violates this order, they will be held in contempt of court. Patricia's mouth fell open. But I'm also awarding Mr. Richardson attorney fees and costs in the amount of. She looked at Marcus. What are we at? $12,400, Your Honor, Marcus said. $12,400 to be paid by the HOA within 30 days. And Miss Winters, I'm ordering you personally to pay Mr. Richardson an additional $5,000 for the harassment and distress you've caused. This is outrageous, Patricia shouted. He's ruining the neighborhood. Judge Morrison's eyes went cold. Miss Winters, you are dangerously close to being held in contempt right now. I suggest you sit down and be quiet. Patricia sat, tears of rage streaming down her face. One more thing, Judge Morrison said. Mr. Richardson, do you have evidence of the illegal dumping on the public road? Yes, Your Honor. Video footage showing a truck registered to Miss Winters' husband dumping debris on 3 separate occasions. Provide that evidence to the bailiff. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. The hearing ended and we walked out victorious. Patricia stormed past us without a word, her lawyers trailing behind her looking shell-shocked. That went well, Marcus said with a satisfied smile. Better than expected. Judge Morrison doesn't tolerate harassment or frivolous lawsuits. The HOA picked the wrong judge. Over the next few days, I provided the video evidence to the district attorney's office as ordered. Deputy Martinez contacted me to let me know they were investigating. Illegal dumping on a public road is a serious offense, he said. Especially multiple incidents. Could result in significant fines and even criminal charges. Patricia and Donald Winters were charged with 3 counts of illegal dumping and 1 count of obstruction of a public thoroughfare. The criminal case moved slowly through the system, but eventually they both pled guilty to reduced charges and were sentenced to community service, fines totaling $8,000 and 2 years of probation. The HOA, meanwhile, struggled to pay the judgment against them. According to George, who kept his ear to the ground about these things, the legal fees from their failed lawsuit had depleted their reserves. They'd spent over $40,000 on attorney fees for a case they never should have brought. 3 months after the court ruling, I got a letter from a new HOA president, a man named Stephen Cross. It was brief and polite, acknowledging the court's ruling and apologizing for the harassment I'd endured. He assured me the HOA would respect my property rights and the boundaries established by the court. I appreciated the gesture but remained wary. I kept my cameras up and continued documenting everything. Patricia, according to George, had been forced to resign as HOA president in disgrace. The membership had voted her out in an emergency meeting after learning how much money she'd cost them. Several members had threatened to sue her personally for mismanagement of HOA funds. I saw her once, about 6 months after the court case, at a grocery store in Boulder Creek. She turned and walked the other way when she spotted me. I felt no satisfaction in her humiliation, just relief that the nightmare was over. The road remained exactly as it had always been, gravel and well-maintained. I continued to grade it twice a year and add fresh gravel when needed. The county still didn't maintain it, but that was fine. It was my connection to the rest of the world, and I took pride in keeping it in good condition. George and Mrs. Henderson both thanked me for standing up to the HOA. You probably saved us from eventually getting dragged into their nonsense, George said. If they'd succeeded with you, they would have come after all of us eventually. Mrs. Henderson brought me a homemade pie. You're a good neighbor, Robert, always have been. I'm glad that awful woman couldn't push you around. Life returned to normal. I worked from home as a software consultant, enjoyed my peaceful property, and maintained my little stretch of public road without interference. The cameras caught the occasional deer or raccoon, but no more midnight dumpers. About a year after the court case, I got a call from a reporter at the Boulder Creek Gazette. They'd heard about the case and wanted to do a story about HOA overreach. "It's become a real problem in this area," the reporter, a young woman named Jennifer, explained. "HOAs with too much power and not enough oversight. Your case is a perfect example of what can go wrong." I agreed to be interviewed, though I kept it factual and didn't bash Patricia personally. The story ran on the front page of the local section, complete with photos of the road and a summary of the legal battle. The response was overwhelming. I got calls and emails from dozens of people sharing their own HOA horror stories. Some were fighting similar battles over property rights. Others had been bullied into compliance with unreasonable demands. A few had even been forced to sell their homes because of crushing HOA fines. One caller, a woman named Sandra, was crying as she told me her story. "They're trying to take my house because I painted my door blue instead of beige. I've got $60,000 in fines and they're foreclosing. I'm 73 years old. Where am I supposed to go?" I gave her Marcus's contact information and urged her to fight it. I didn't know if she ever did, but the call stuck with me. These weren't just property disputes. They were people's lives being destroyed by petty tyrants drunk on tiny amounts of power. The Boulder Creek Gazette story prompted a state legislator to propose new regulations on HOA enforcement powers. I was invited to testify before a state committee about my experience. Standing in the Colorado State Capitol in Denver, I told my story to a room full of legislators and interested citizens. I kept it simple and factual, explaining how an HOA had tried to regulate a public road and harass me into compliance despite having no legal authority. "The problem isn't the concept of HOAs," I said. "It's the lack of accountability. When HOA boards can levy unlimited fines, file frivolous lawsuits, and harass homeowners without consequences, the system is broken. We need oversight, we need limits on enforcement powers, and we need penalties for boards that abuse their authority." The proposed legislation didn't pass that session, but it started a conversation. Other states were grappling with similar issues, and reform was slowly gaining momentum. Back home, life continued peacefully. The Meadowbrook Estates HOA gave me a wide berth, and the new president seemed determined to run things more reasonably. I heard they'd implemented new policies requiring board approval before filing any lawsuits and limiting the president's unilateral authority. 2 years after the court case, I was working in my home office when I got a call from an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Richardson." "This is Donald Winters." I tensed. "Patricia's husband. We'd never actually spoken directly. What can I do for you?" He sighed heavily. "I wanted to apologize for everything. The dumping, the harassment, all of it." I waited, saying nothing. Patricia was convinced she was right, and I went along with it. I shouldn't have. "We wasted a lot of money, damaged our reputation, and made your life hell for no good reason." He paused. "She's getting help now. Therapy. She had some control issues that got way out of hand." "I appreciate you calling," I said carefully. "Anyway, I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. What we did was wrong." After we hung up, I sat there for a while, processing the conversation. It didn't undo the harassment or the stress, but it was something. An acknowledgement that they'd been wrong. Marcus called that evening with interesting news. "Henderson and Associates is being investigated by the Colorado Bar Association." "The HOA's law firm?" "Yeah. Turns out your case wasn't an isolated incident. They've been encouraging HOAs to file questionable lawsuits and running up huge legal bills in the process. Multiple complaints have been filed. They might lose their license to practice. Couldn't happen to nicer people. The legal community doesn't look kindly on attorneys who exploit clients and abuse the court system. If the investigation finds what I think it'll find, they're done. 3 years after Patricia first showed up on my porch with her leather folder and demands, I was sitting in that same spot, drinking my morning coffee and enjoying the quiet. The road stretched out before me, gravel and peaceful, connecting my little corner of the world to the rest of civilization. George pulled up in his truck and parked near my porch. "Morning, Robert. Thought you'd want to know the Meadowbrook Estates HOA is dissolving." I set down my coffee. "What?" "Yep. After all the legal bills and bad publicity, most of the members voted to disband. They're filing the paperwork this month. Apparently, it's been nothing but problems since your lawsuit, and people are tired of dealing with it." Wow. Thought you'd appreciate the irony. Patricia tried so hard to expand the HOA's power, and instead, she destroyed the whole thing. George grinned. "Anyway, I'm heading into town. Need anything?" "No, I'm good. Thanks for the update." After he left, I sat there thinking about the journey. From a simple property rights dispute to a legal battle, criminal charges, and eventually the collapse of an entire HOA. It seemed almost surreal, but the road remained. Still gravel, still well-maintained, still serving its purpose as a public throughway that I happened to care for. The county records still showed it as Maple Ridge Drive, a public road that just happened to dead end at my property line. I'd spent thousands of dollars on legal fees, endured months of harassment, and dealt with more stress than anyone should have to face over a driveway. But I'd also established an important precedent. The court had clearly ruled that HOAs couldn't exceed their authority, couldn't regulate public roads, and couldn't force people into membership retroactively. Marcus told me my case was being cited in other HOA disputes across Colorado. Lawyers were using Judge Morrison's ruling to push back against overreaching HOAs. One homeowner in Colorado Springs had successfully fought off an HOA trying to fine him for solar panels, citing my case as precedent. The cameras I'd installed stayed up. Not because I expected more trouble, but because they'd proven useful. I'd captured some beautiful wildlife footage over the years. A mountain lion passing through one night, a family of foxes that denned nearby, even a black bear once, ambling down the road in the early morning. Mrs. Henderson passed away peacefully in her sleep 4 years after the court case. She was 91. Her children sold the property to a young couple from Denver who wanted to escape the city. I helped them understand the road situation when they moved in, and they were perfectly fine with it. "We're just happy to have space and quiet," the wife said. "After living in a condo with an insane HOA, this is paradise." That made me smile. The young couple, Tony and Rachel, became good neighbors. They appreciated the rural lifestyle and the freedom from HOA restrictions. Tony even helped me with road maintenance sometimes, showing up with his truck when I was spreading gravel. "This is therapeutic," he said once, shoveling gravel in the afternoon sun. "No rules about what color my shovel can be or what time of day I'm allowed to do physical labor." I laughed. "Rough HOA. You have no idea. We couldn't park in our own driveway overnight. Had to use the garage or get fined. Couldn't have packages visible on the porch for more than 3 hours. Once got a violation notice for having the wrong shade of white Christmas lights." He shook his head. "When we heard about this place, and that there was no HOA, we jumped on it." Stories like that reminded me why I'd fought so hard. It wasn't just about my property or my road. It was about the principle that people should have reasonable autonomy over their own homes. 5 years after the initial confrontation, I was featured in a documentary about HOA abuses in America. The filmmaker had contacted me after reading the Boulder Creek Gazette article, and I'd agreed to participate. The documentary, called Governed: The HOA Crisis, featured interviews with homeowners across the country who'd faced similar situations. There were people who'd lost their homes over minor violations, elderly residents forced out of communities they'd lived in for decades, families bankrupted by legal fees fighting unreasonable HOA demands. My segment focused on the public road issue and Patricia's harassment campaign. The filmmaker had obtained copies of all the county complaints she'd filed, the photos she'd taken, and even interviewed some of the county employees who dealt with her. She called our office almost daily, one county planner said in the documentary, always with some new complaint about Mr. Richardson. After the first few were investigated and dismissed, we knew they were baseless, but we still had to follow up on each one. It was a massive waste of county resources. The documentary premiered at a film festival in Austin, Texas, and later aired on a streaming service. I got messages from people all over the country, thanking me for sharing my story and encouraging them to stand up to their own HOAs. One message, from a retired teacher in Florida, particularly moved me. I've been fighting my HOA for 3 years over a fence they say is too tall. Your story gave me the courage to take them to court. I won. Thank you for showing me it was possible. The road continued to serve its purpose year after year. I upgraded to a better gravel mixture, one that required less frequent maintenance and handled drainage better. The county inspector, Dave, stopped by once to see the improvements. You know, the county could probably take over maintenance if you wanted, he said. This is technically our responsibility. No thanks, I like having control over it. Besides, you guys have enough roads to worry about, he laughed. Fair enough. But seriously, if you ever want to hand it over, let us know. You're doing great work here. Patricia moved away from the area about 6 years after our court battle. I heard through George that she and Donald had relocated to Arizona, looking for a fresh start away from the reputation they'd built in Boulder Creek. I wished them well. Holding grudges takes energy I didn't want to spend. The Meadowbrook Estates subdivision, now without an HOA, settled into a more relaxed atmosphere. Properties were well maintained not because of threatening violation notices, but because people took pride in their homes. Some driveways were gravel, some were concrete, some were paved. It didn't matter. Everyone got along fine. George and I became closer friends over the years. We'd have coffee on my porch most Saturday mornings, watching the sun come up over the mountains and talking about everything from politics to gardening to the best way to maintain a gravel road. You ever regret fighting so hard? He asked me once. I thought about it. No. It was the right thing to do, not just for me, but for the principle. People need to understand they have rights, and HOAs can't just do whatever they want. You became kind of famous for it. Not the kind of famous I was looking for, but yeah, I guess so. The years passed quietly after that. My road remained gravel and well-maintained. The county never challenged its designation as a public road. The property values in the area actually increased after the HOA dissolved, contrary to Patricia's dire predictions. I expanded my garden, adding raised beds for vegetables. Built a workshop where I could tinker with woodworking projects. Adopted a dog from the local shelter, a mixed breed named Duke who loved running up and down the road. Life was peaceful, simple, exactly what I'd wanted when I bought this property all those years ago. 8 years after that first confrontation with Patricia, I was invited to speak at a national conference on property rights and HOA reform in Washington, D.C. The movement had gained significant momentum, with several states passing laws to limit HOA powers and increase accountability. Standing at the podium in a hotel conference room, I told my story once more. But this time, I also talked about what had changed. The fight isn't just about individual cases anymore, I said. It's about systemic reform. HOAs serve a legitimate purpose when they function correctly. But we need laws that prevent abuse, require transparency, and give homeowners real recourse when boards overstep their authority. The audience included legislators, lawyers, homeowners' rights activists, and people currently fighting their own HOA battles. After my talk, dozens of people came up to share their stories or ask for advice. One young man, probably in his 30s, shook my hand with tears in his eyes. My parents lost their house to HOA foreclosure over less than $2,000 in fines for having the wrong mailbox. Your story helped me understand they should have fought harder. I'm working to change laws so this can't happen to other families. These conversations reminded me that my small battle in rural Colorado had become part of something larger. A movement to reform a system that had spun out of control in too many places, flying home from D.C. I looked out the airplane window at the patchwork of communities below. Subdivisions with their neat rows of houses, all looking similar from this height. How many of them were governed by reasonable HOAs that actually served their communities? How many were trapped under the thumb of petty tyrants like Patricia had been? I didn't have answers, but I knew the conversation was happening. People were pushing back, demanding accountability, fighting for their rights. Back home, Duke greeted me with enthusiasm, and I spent the evening on my porch, watching the stars come out over my little piece of Colorado. The road stretched out before me, the same as it had been for decades. Public but privately maintained. A symbol of the battle I'd fought and won. George stopped by the next morning with fresh pastries from the bakery in town. How was the big conference? Interesting. Met a lot of people fighting the good fight. Still think it was worth it. All the hassle, the legal fees, the stress. I looked at the road, the property, the mountains in the distance. Absolutely. This is my home. I had every right to defend it. Well, you're a local legend now. The guy who took on the HOA and won. I'd rather just be a guy with a nice, quiet property, George laughed. Too late for that. Marcus called that afternoon with news. Henderson and Associates lost their license. The bar investigation found multiple instances of ethical violations, conflicts of interest, and exploitation of clients. They're done. Good riddance. Your case was cited as one of the primary examples of their misconduct. They encouraged the HOA to pursue a clearly frivolous lawsuit and billed hundreds of hours for it. At least something good came from all that. As the sun set that evening, I sat on my porch with Duke at my feet, reflecting on the journey. From a simple confrontation about a driveway to a legal battle that helped spark a nationwide conversation about HOA reform. Patricia had shown up that morning years ago, convinced she had the power to make me comply with her vision of how things should be. But she'd been wrong about the law, wrong about her authority, and wrong about me. The road remained a public road as it had always been. I maintained it not because any HOA demanded it, but because it was the right thing to do. It served me, my neighbors, and anyone else who needed to use it. In the end, standing up for what was right had been worth all the trouble. The harassment, the legal fees, the stress, all of it led to justice and helped protect others from similar abuses. The gravel road stretched out before me, bathed in the golden light of sunset, a testament to the principle that sometimes the little guy can win. Sometimes standing your ground against unreasonable demands pays off. Sometimes justice prevails. And sometimes, a simple driveway that isn't really a driveway becomes the battlefield where important precedents are set and rights are preserved. I raised my coffee mug in a silent toast to that first morning when Patricia had shown up with her demands and her folder. She'd thought she could intimidate me into compliance. Instead, she'd picked a fight with someone who understood his rights and was willing to defend them. The road remained, public and gravel and perfectly maintained, a quiet symbol of victory and a reminder that property rights matter, that laws have meaning, and that HOAs are not above those laws. As darkness fell over Boulder Creek and the stars emerged overhead, I felt grateful for it all. The fight, the victory, the precedent set, and the peaceful resolution. My little gravel road had become more than just a path to my house. It had become a symbol of resistance against overreach, a victory for individual rights, and a reminder that sometimes the most important battles are fought not over grand principles in distant courts, but over simple things like the right to maintain a public road without harassment. Duke stirred at my feet, and I scratched behind his ears. Tomorrow I'd probably grade the road again, ensuring it remained in good condition. Not because anyone demanded it, not because of HOA regulations or violation notices, but because it was my choice. And that freedom to choose, that autonomy over my own property and the public road I maintained, was worth every moment of the fight it took to preserve it. The stars shone bright overhead, the mountains stood silent and eternal in the distance, and my gravel road stretched out into the darkness, public and private and perfectly mine to maintain as I saw fit. That was victory enough for anyone.